Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name is Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Briana, and I don't. And this week we're discussing Ouija, Origin of Evil.
Hell yeah.
Mary, we invite you into our circle. If that's you, blow out the candles.
Oh my God.
This is a scam.
She deserved it, Mom. It's your job to stand at the curtains and not attack the clients.
And you, young lady?
What's a scam?
You are so weird.
Does she have a lot of problems?
It's nothing too concerning.
What's this?
New prop for work. Spirit, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And we can see you.
Who are you talking to, Doris?
Daddy, are you there? Who are you?
Did you see her writing this?
No.
Because it's Polish.
Doris, who did this?
I'll show you. Are you here?
Something is happening that we can't understand.
I'm concerned about your girl. The spirit world is dangerous.
Do you know what it feels like to be strangled to death?
What did you think of this movie?
I love it. For anybody that knows me or listened to our Oculus episode or listened to the interview we did with Chewy from Myths Behind Legends, I am a Mike Flanagan stan. Or a Flan stan, if you will. And he can do no wrong. So, I love it.
I liked it too. I don't want to watch it again, like many of the things that we watch, but I don't regret watching it, and that's great.
Yeah, this is when you were like dreading. Like, I feel like in the 2 days leading up to us watching this movie, you were like, oh, let's get this over with.
Yes, because I watched the trailer for it, and I did like a react video for our TikTok, which the video is terrible because I'm trying to still figure out how to use TikTok because I'm an old. The trailer really does a good job making it look way scarier than it actually is.
Well, and I think part of that too is the first like almost half of the movie is kind of scare free. Like they spend they spend a lot of they spend a lot of time building up the characters and the story and the relationships, which is, you know, obviously why Mike Flanagan is such a good horror director. He really makes you care about what's going on. So I feel like that kind of contributes to the overall like thing where you didn't spend an hour and a half just constantly on edge.
Yep, and I'm actually going to talk about that later because I read a whole article that was commentary. I think they were calling it commentary on the commentary. So they watched the DVD commentary and talk about that. So I'll be sharing that information later.
That's weird. Who would want to listen to what other people think about movies?
I used to love watching commentaries.
I was being sarcastic. That's what we do here.
Oh, that's exactly true. Movie credits. It's written by Mike Flanagan and Jeff Howard. It's directed by Mike Flanagan, starring Elizabeth Reeser as Alice, Lulu Wilson as Doris, Annalise Basso as Lena, and Henry Thomas as Father Tom.
And 3 of those 4 stars worked with Mike Flanagan on The Haunting of Hill House, which, if you haven't seen it and you're a horror fan, like, what are you even doing with your life? And the 4th, Annalise Basso, worked with him on Oculus. So this was, you know, he has people that he likes to work with. Obviously, this was before Hill House.
But Annalise Basso was specifically selected because of Oculus, so.
Yes, I read that as well. He wrote the part with her in mind.
Mm-hmm. A summary for the film: a fortune teller buys a Ouija board and her daughter quickly becomes possessed by the ghosts of the home's dark past. Yeah, great. Love that. Okay, so what was the Rotten Tomato score for this movie?
So this had 83% critically, but interestingly, 57% audiences.
That's weird.
Yeah, I think maybe the ending was a little dark for a lot of people. You know, spoiler alert.
They kill a kid. I mean, it's pretty dark.
They full on murder a 9-year-old at the end of this movie. And you're like rooting for it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you know, that's something I actually was thinking about as we were watching the ending, is I think this movie being a prequel gives it a lot of leeway in having an unhappy ending because you already know it leads to something else bad. And I think that that Rotten Tomatoes score is reflective of the fact that people don't like an unhappy ending.
I don't think I knew that this was a prequel, even though that makes perfect sense because it's literally called Origins of Evil. I knew it was associated with the first Ouija, but I don't think I thought that or knew that it was a prequel. And so I was like absolutely rooting for a happy ending and was really sad when it wasn't.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, this may as well not be associated with the first Ouija. The movie was not good and had, like, nobody that was involved in this was really involved in that, and it shows.
Yeah. Okay, what are your flesh wounds?
I've got a few little tidbits here. A little bit of credit to Rob Hunter from filmschoolrejects.com for some of the information. He had a whole little article with like 33 or 34 little facts about Mike Flanagan, and he also seemed like a bit of a Flan stan like myself, so I really appreciated what he was putting down. So a couple of these things I kind of got from him. So the film was shot using a digital camera, like most modern movies. But I don't know if you noticed throughout the course of the movie the dots that appear in the...
I think we read the same article.
We probably did.
Yeah, so it's like cigarette burns, they call them?
Yep, that's one name for them. Q dots, Q marks. Cigarette burns is like the informal, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they actually used cigarettes originally. I don't know, to be honest. But so Flanagan added that. He also used antique lenses to kind of give it that old school feel. The opening title card was like inspired by old school movies, and that opening Universal animation there. But so back to Q dots. Do you know what Q dots are? Did you ever like look into them or anything?
No.
So it's pretty cool. A pair of Q marks is used to signal to the projectionist that a particular reel of a movie is ending. Most film, you know, during a certain point, the reels were only about 14 to 20 minutes each. So they would have to switch out the reels as the movie was playing. The first dot, known as the motor cue, is placed about 8 seconds before the end of the picture section of the reel. The second mark, known as the changeover cue, is placed about 1 second before the end. Each mark lasts for about 0.17 seconds. So they just kind of pop up and disappear. And that's always something that I've noticed in old movies, but I never really thought one way or the other about, and I just thought it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I noticed like one spot of it, and I was like, why did they do that? And then I never thought about it again.
Yeah, because I mean, so we hadn't really mentioned that yet. The movie takes place in, I think, 1967.
Yeah.
And so it's all set up to give it that vintage feel. Another little fun thing was right around the climax of the movie, I was noticing as they were running around the house, I was like, this house looks really familiar. And I thought about the movie Lights Out. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this looks a lot like the house from Lights Out. It's because it is. Mm-hmm. The two movies are completely unrelated, different production companies, different writers, directors, actors, everything. There's no one thing in common with these movies other than the fact that they're horror movies, and they use the same house interior set for their movie. This this started about 2 days after Lights Out wrapped production. Lights Out came out in June 2016, and Ouija came out in October 2016.
That's funny.
Yeah, so they just both shot in that house. And that's probably a movie we'll cover for the podcast at some point. It's really short. It's like 80 minutes.
Yes,
it's super short.
Love that.
And it's not particularly good, but it's fun. It's got a couple good scares. I enjoy it.
It makes sense that it's been used in multiple horror movies because as soon as I saw the inside of the house, I said, this house is definitely haunted. So
that's weird because I feel like if we were looking at houses to buy and we like visited that house, you would have loved it.
Yeah, for sure. But the concern exists always.
So my last little bit, I guess this is going to be old news to you as well, but Lulu Wilson. So there is a scene about halfway through the movie when she describes in great detail what it is like to be strangled.
I wrote this whole thing out. Okay,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. It's all right.
I'm sorry.
There actually wasn't much that I could find about this movie, so I thought we might have the same article.
Yeah, but so she did that monologue from the script as her audition. Most kids kind of did it like creepy, like slow, like, do you know what it's like to be strangled to death?
I hate that. Stop.
But she did it cheerily, and Mike Flanagan loved it. And Lulu Wilson, for her own part, is basically a horror icon already. She's been in this. She's been in Hill House. She's been in Becky. She's been in one of the Annabelle movies. She's just awesome in everything. Like in this movie, her performance is really good for like somebody who has probably lived most of her life peeing her pants. But anyway, so she did that monologue for her audition. And initially, Mike Flanagan was going to cut between her and Mikey to kind of show his reactions during the shot. But the shot in the movie was her first take, and it was so good, Flanagan just stayed on her the whole time. And that really was, like, that was probably my favorite scene in the movie.
I mean, favorite, okay. Effective, and he made the correct choice, yes.
Well, I respect the art. And that's what I got.
All right, so touch points for this movie, which the title is too long, but I have none other than I remember Ouija board movies coming out. I don't know if it's this one, if it's the original, if there's others after. I just remember trailers for some Ouija movie, and at this point in time, I was obviously skipping past them and pretending they don't exist.
I'm honestly surprised this isn't higher on your radar because of how, like, I don't want to use an insulting word, but to how passionate you and your family are about Ouija boards.
Yes, we've talked about this before. Ouija boards are absolutely not allowed. Although I did own one. Someone bought me one, the game or whatever. I never played it. I specifically wanted it because I was definitely intrigued in my youth. But then as soon as I had it in my hands, I was absolutely too afraid to ever use it, so it never got used.
I'm surprised that was even allowed in your house.
Someone bought it for me. It was like my dad probably didn't know I had it or something. I don't know. But no, I just, as soon as scary movie commercials come on, I changed the channel. So that's Ouija, skip. We're done.
Fair enough.
What about you?
I did not see this movie in theaters because I had seen the first Ouija. I'd like rented it or something, and it was bad. You know, I'll just go right out and say it. It was bad. And this came out at a time in my life where I was very, very busy with work, and I didn't get out to see a lot of scary movies. So this one kind of flew under the radar for me a little bit, and then maybe about a year after it came out, I caught it on like Amazon Prime or something, and I was like blown away. Yeah, and so us watching it now, I think was my third or fourth time watching it, because I definitely rewatched it last year at one point. Yeah, I'd watch it again right now. Great movie.
So since this movie is all about the Ouija board origins of evil, I thought we would talk about origins of the Ouija board itself. I found a very long article from Smithsonian.org. I'm obviously not going to read the entire thing, but it goes through the creation and how it was created of the Ouija board, and also the science behind it and like the social science behind it.
Big honking quotation marks around science there for me. Just throwing that out there.
Well, I guess it really just the social science of it.
Right.
Which is not a quotation. Like, that's fact. It's people making the thing happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff. It's a very interesting article. I would read it, but I just want to talk about like the history of it.
Maybe throw up a link on our Instagram or something later. Yeah.
So this is The Strange and Mysterious History of the Ouija Board from the Smithsonian. Is it a tool of the devil, harmless family game, or fascinating glimpse into the non-conscious mind? By Linda Rodriguez McRobbie. February 1891, the first few advertisements started appearing in papers. Ouija, the wonderful talking board, boomed a Pittsburgh toy and novelty shop, describing a magical device that answered questions, quote, about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy, and promised, quote, never failing amusement and recreation for all classes.
Classes?
Like groups of people.
All right.
A link, quote, between the known and unknown, the material and immaterial. Another advertisement in a New York newspaper declared it interesting and mysterious and testified as proven at patent office before it was allowed. Price, $1.50.
In 1891?
Yeah. So I was very intrigued by it having been proven at the patent office. I was like, gotta learn about this. This mysterious talking board was basically what's sold in board game aisles today. A flat board with the letters of the alphabet arrayed in two semicircles above the numbers 0 through 9, the words yes and no in the uppermost corners, goodbye at the bottom, accompanied by a planchette. Didn't know it was called that, but that's the teardrop-shaped device, usually with a small window in the body, used to maneuver about the board.
I just want to throw out there, so the inflation calculator that I typically use only goes back to 1913. So we've still got about 20 years of ground here. I'm sorry, 30 years of ground here. But in 1913, $1.50 was about $44. So, I mean, so that's like the price of like a PlayStation 5 game now. Like, not $44, but I mean, in 1891.
So then that's expensive?
Yeah, it's like $60.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The idea was that 2 or more people would sit around the board, place their fingertips on the planchette, pose a question, and watch, dumbfounded, as the planchette moved from letter to letter, spelling out the answers seemingly of its own accord. The biggest difference in the materials, the board is now usually cardboard rather than wood, and the planchette is plastic. So that explains maybe why it was expensive. It was like made of wood. And
yeah, probably hand carved
bone or something.
I mean, so this is before the invention of the assembly line.
Right.
So it's just like one guy in a room bent over a piece
Carving.
of wood. Yeah.
Like that's probably really nice, actually.
Yeah, I want to like buy like an old Ouija board. Would you let me have that?
No. I mean, I'm intrigued. Like I read that and I was like, I want one, and then I'll never have one. Though truth in advertising is hard to come by, especially in products from the 19th century, the Ouija board was interesting and mysterious. It actually had been proven to work at the patent office. And today, even psychologists believe it may offer a link between the known and the unknown. Ouija historian Robert Murch, what a job, has been researching the story of the board since 1992. This article is from 2013. When he started his research, he says, no one really knew anything about its origins, which struck him as odd. Quote, for such an iconic thing that strikes both fear and wonder in American culture, how can no one know where it came from? The Ouija board, in fact, came straight out of American 19th century obsession with spiritualism, which they define as the belief that the dead are able to communicate with the living. Spiritualism, which had been around for years in Europe, hit America in 1848 with the sudden prominence of the Fox sisters of upstate New York, who claimed to receive messages from spirits that rapped on the walls to answer questions, recreating this feat of channeling in parlors across the state. Spiritualism worked for Americans because it was compatible with Christian dogma, meaning one could hold a seance on Saturday night and have no qualms about going to church on Sunday. It was acceptable, even wholesome activity to contact spirits. Even Mary Todd Lincoln, wife of Abraham Lincoln, conducted seances in the White House after their 11-year-old son died of a fever in 1862. During the Civil War, spiritualism gained adherents in droves. People wanted to connect desperately with those that they lost or who had never come home. Murch says communicating with the dead was common. It wasn't seen as bizarre or weird. It's hard to imagine that now we look at that and think, why are you opening the gates of hell? But opening the gates of hell wasn't on anyone's mind when they started the Kennard Novelty Company, the first producers of the Ouija board. In fact, guess what they were all about?
Shmoney?
Money. Capitalism, baby. Taking advantage of the spiritualism growth, they wanted to create something that allowed communication with spirits to be a little quicker than going through the whole alphabet by rapping on walls to get responses is basically what they used to do. So they created the board, but they didn't have a name when they initially created it. The name came from one of the founders' sisters-in-law who was or claimed to be a strong medium. She supplied the now instantly recognizable handle. Sitting around the table, they asked the board what they should call it. The name Ouija came through, and when they asked what that meant, the board replied, good luck. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, so podcast that I listen to a lot, Last Podcast on the Left, did a 2-part series on the origin of the Ouija board, and they covered a lot of this stuff. And, you know, just a little plug for them, if anybody is interested. Good series to listen to. They're great guys.
Knowing that if they couldn't prove that the board worked, they wouldn't get their patent, Bond brought the medium, so the sister-in-law, to the patent office in Washington with him when he filed his application. The chief patent officer demanded a demonstration. If the board could accurately spell out his name, which apparently was unknown to Bond and Peters, he'd allow the patent application to proceed. They all sat down, communed with spirits, and the planchette faithfully spelled out the patent officer's name. Whether or not it was this mystical spirits or the fact that they actually knew his last name, because actually Bond, the maker of it, he also was a patent attorney. So it's kind of like he might have known the man's name.
He was also wearing a name tag.
He was?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I'm like, it doesn't say.
But like, does that not sound like the end of like an 80s like college movie? Like, okay, we need to get the Ouija board to work to get our patent.
Yeah.
Like that is like a scheme. Like that doesn't sound like real life to me.
I know. But that made it seem like it worked, so they got their patent approved as a toy or game. The first patent offers no explanation as to how the device works, just asserts that it does. That ambiguity and mystery was part of a more or less conscious marketing effort. According to Murch, they were very shrewd businessmen. The less that the Kennard Company said about how the board worked, the more mysterious it seemed, and the more people wanted to buy it. Ultimately, it was a moneymaker. They didn't care why people thought it worked. The board's instant and now, more than 120 years later, prolonged success showed that it had tapped into a weird place in American culture. It was marketed as both mystical oracle and as family entertainment, fun with an element of otherworldly excitement. This meant that it wasn't only spiritualists who bought the board. In fact, the people who disliked the Ouija board most tended to be spirit mediums because they felt their job as the spiritual middleman was cut out. The Ouija board appealed to people from across a wide spectrum of ages, professions, and education, mostly because the Ouija board offered a fun way for people to believe in something. Then, of course, the 70s is what ruined everything. Specifically, can you guess what it was that made the Ouija board seem evil?
The Satanic Panic?
The Exorcist. Which also is probably part of the Satanic Panic. The Exorcist scared the pants off people in theaters with all that pea soup and head spinning and supposedly based on a true story business, and the implication that 12-year-old Reagan was possessed by a demon after playing with a Ouija board by herself. It changed how people saw the board. Murch says it's kind of like Psycho. No one was afraid of showers until that scene. Almost overnight, it became a tool of the devil, and for that reason, a tool of horror writers and movie makers. It began popping up in scary movies, usually opening the door to evil spirits hell-bent on ripping apart co-eds. Outside of the theater, the following years saw the Ouija board denounced by religious groups as Satan's preferred method of communication. Christian religious groups still remain wary of the board, citing scripture denouncing communication with spirits through mediums. Even within the paranormal community, Ouija boards enjoyed a dodgy reputation. Murch says that when he first began speaking at paranormal conventions, he was told to leave his antique boards at home because they scared people too much. And there's a little bit more just kind of about like the science of it and all, like I said. But that's your history of the Ouija board.
Very informative. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will say for those spiritualists who didn't like it because it was taking away their job, if your job can be taken away by a board game, maybe rethink your career path.
Well, I prefer going to a person anyway who's not using a Ouija board. But I do see, I go to witch stores and stuff, and there are Ouija boards there. And so it's still a thing that's used. I will never use it. Like we said, this movie starts it takes place really in 1967. There's a sign on the front lawn for a fortune teller on a beautiful old house. Then we go inside. Before that, you did mention, you talked about in your Flesh Wounds, the old school Universal logo. So just a little more specific about that article, or about what Flanagan said. He wanted to create the experience that he had as a kid when he was getting into horror and make the whole thing kind of an immersive experience. So that's why we've got the cigarette burns for the real changes. And Universal allowed the use of their sort of old original logo to start. Alice, the mother, is hosting a session with an old man and a younger woman. That younger woman clearly does not believe this reading.
Yep, and that younger woman is Kate Siegel, who is Mike Flanagan's wife, IRL, and is also in a lot of his movies, including the fantastic Hush, which is another one we're definitely going to cover sometime.
Looking forward to it.
But this is her only scene in this movie. She's not featured at all in this one.
Yeah. The old man is there to talk to his wife who has passed. Alice invites Mary, the wife, to come forward into their circle. The blonde girl interrupts to say, "Dad, don't give this woman your money." And as she says that, the table rattles.
And you say, as the table is shaking, "Wow, idiot." But then, seemingly chastising her for questioning it. But then
Yes.
you immediately follow that up with, "This is definitely a con."
Yes, because the cabinet also creeps open, a candle is lit, and I just very quickly got the sense of this isn't real.
You were typing furiously throughout this whole scene, and I definitely felt that it was because you were offended that somebody would dare fake a seance.
I was a little annoyed, but it's fine. I get why. The cabinet creeps open, a candle is lit. There's also 3 candles lit on the table, and Alice says that you can ask 3 yes or no questions. A blowout of the candle equals no. And the blonde is why only 3 questions? Because even though the table just rattled, she's still a non-believer. The first question is if Mary is in pain anymore, and the candle blows out. So no, she's not in pain. He asks if Mary can forgive her, and it doesn't blow out, so that's a yes. And she asks also for forgiveness. Blondie breaks the circle, frustrated, and the table rumbles again. They look over at the curtains, which are blocking off the room they're in from another room in the house, and there's like a shadowy figure behind the curtain. The last question is about the daughter and her boyfriend and money. I guess she's with this guy, and he wants money, and he says if whatever works out, he'll ask the daughter to marry her. So basically the question is like, I think, should I trust this guy, give him the money, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the daughter is clearly in on it. She is trying to scam her dad out of money with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
It's like a scam investment. Her boyfriend's name is probably Bernie Madoff.
It's like an MLM or something. The candle blows out, so that means no, like don't give this person the money. And the shadowy figure kind of pushes through the curtain and scares them all. All the candles blow out. Everyone is shocked, literally out of their chairs. Mom just looks unhappy. And the old man is grabbing his chest on the floor like he might have a heart attack. Everything's okay, though. They leave. Alice apologizes, saying the spirit world is unpredictable. And to make up for it, she declines his tip. He's happy, though, because now he knows that his wife is not in pain. So Alice goes inside, and then she calls for her daughters, Lena and Doris, because she's basically unhappy with their performance, specifically Lena.
I mean, she had a heart of gold, though. You know, she didn't charge him.
Yeah.
And she gave him good advice. Don't let your stupid daughter scam you.
I think she charged them. I think that's just the tip, I think.
Nope. That was...
Really?
Yeah, that was her
only
fee.
$5? Wow.
Well, so I actually made a note of that because she's like, that cost me $5. But in 1967 money, that's about $45.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, $45 for a reading, I feel like is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
How much do you pay for yours?
$75.
Yeah. So...
Plus tip.
You tip your psychic?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not trying to throw shade at any psychics out there. That just seems unnecessary.
Well, I guess it depends. It's just like anything else, like if they're the business owner or not kind of thing.
And now does this tip, like, is it a scale based on how happy you are with your reading or not?
I'm a millennial, so, I always tip, so I don't know.
I mean, look, I was a bartender for a long time. I love getting tips. I'm not one of those anti-tip people, but I don't know if I support tipping psychics. I'm going to be honest with you.
That's because you don't believe in it.
No, it's because it's a service that doesn't require tipping.
But it's just like it's just like any service, like a hairdresser. It's the same kind of thing in my brain. I don't know.
Yeah,
like you tip your hairstylist, you tip your psychic.
Yeah, I mean, these psychics, they get a lot of student loans going through psychic school, and then they have to pay their chair fees to rent out their Ouija boards.
Oh my God, stop. So Doris, the younger one, she's behind the cabinet. Lena, the older one, is the one who acted as the spirit. The table is mechanical, and she's kind of just she's, setting everything back up, essentially showing us how it all works. And Doris is like asking what a scam is because the blonde woman called this whole thing a scam. Alice explains that a scam is a lie, but they're helping people, so this isn't a scam. Later, Doris is asleep on the couch with a Lizzie Borden movie playing in the background. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah. Fall River represent.
I was like, that's got to be some kind of Easter egg, considering what happens later. As they go to bed, the camera zooms in on a family photo with Dad. So Dad's definitely dead. Doris prays to Daddy that night and asks Alice why she doesn't pray ever since their dad died. And she just explains that she does still pray. The older daughter sneaks out, and the mom is struggling to pay the bill. So that's kind of what's happening here. Lena, she sneaks to a friend's house because that person's mom is at a bridge game. At the house, she spots a Ouija board, and the friends want to play. So there's 4 of them there.
I just want to throw this out there. When she walks in, Mikey, who we learn a little bit after this, is sort of her, budding romance. Mm-hmm. He greets her by calling her Lena Bobina. Which I really appreciated. And I don't know if you know this. That's like the name game.
Yes.
The name game was a song, and it was a single that first came out in 1964.
That's embarrassing. It was on the radio?
It was on the radio, and it peaked at number 3 on the Hot 100.
But what did they just say? Random names?
I think it started with the woman who sang it. She used her own name first to demonstrate how you play the name game.
Oh, God, that's so lame. Imagine listening to that on the radio.
I mean, to be fair, TV was pretty new. There wasn't a lot to do.
Oh, okay. I guess so, the radio, not music.
Oh, no, it was music. It was a song. It was a single.
I know it's a song, but Okay, it was a single.
Yeah, it was
like,
absolutely a single.
Casey Kasem would be like, and at number 1 this week, The Name Game.
Yeah, except it peaked at number 3.
Okay, well, that's pretty high.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so when I heard that, like, I knew, like, somewhere in the deep, like, recesses of my brain, I knew that this was, like, a single in the 60s, and I was curious as to how relevant that reference was.
Okay, so the 4 of them, they go into a bedroom and play the Ouija board game. There's 3 rules. The rules are 1, never play alone. 2, never play in a graveyard. And 3, always say goodbye.
Wasn't there also, like, a circle once for each person playing?
Yeah, that's not a rule, though, because when the mom pulls it out later, it shows the 3 rules.
Gotcha.
So I don't know why she said that. Never play alone because theoretically nothing will happen, right? Never play in a graveyard because you shouldn't do anything in a graveyard ever. And, you know, always say goodbye to close out the circle, as we learned in Host. So, proper rules. They all put their hands on the planchette, and that the friend who, you know, lives at the house asks if there's a spirit, and it moves to yes. There's a tentative friend there, the me character, basically, and she asks what it's like on the other side, and it spells out cold.
Ooh.
Lena explains that this only works because they're all touching it, so you can't tell who's moving it, and therefore subconsciously you're helping each other.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Lena is a non-believer in all of this, which is kind of interesting considering her mother's profession. While her mother is a fraud, you would think there's still a spiritual belief thing happening, but I guess not. Or maybe it just doesn't translate down to Lena. The mom bursts into the room, though, and they all scream because they've been playing this spooky game, including me.
Oh, yeah, you screamed.
Yeah. In the article, I read that Flanagan is not a fan of jump scares in general, or the idea of them being, you know, required every few minutes in a horror movie. He says, I think they disrupt the tension that you try to build. This jump scare is a nod to his annoyance of them, basically, because he hates when they're fake outs. He uses the example of a cat jumping into frame, like that drives him crazy, and that becoming a jump scare because you weren't expecting it.
Or like every single jump scare in Stigmata being a flock of birds.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So he hates it, but he did like a little nod to the ridiculousness of it.
And that's why we love Mike Flanagan here at Go A Little Mad.
And because I'm a wimp, it completely worked on me. Because the mom found them having, you know, like a party, basically, she called all the moms, and Lena gets picked up by Alice. And they talk about the game. So this is how Alice gets introduced to the Ouija board. The next morning, they're getting ready for school, and they're wearing Catholic school uniforms. So at first, I was confused, like they go to Catholic school considering her profession. But according to the Smithsonian article, it wasn't really that big of a deal to hold seances and go to church. We used to be cooler.
Yeah, I mean, the church wasn't mad about it until they realized that getting mad about it could rile up people and get them more devotion and therefore money.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, everyone.
This isn't Stigmata Part 2. Lena is antsy to leave, and her mom is like, why? Like, what's going on? And the doorbell rings. It's Mikey from the party. Ooh.
And Mikey, honestly, so Alice, right?
Yeah.
Alice is about to give Mikey the 3rd degree.
Oh,
She's going to, like, destroy his hand in the process of, like, warning him against touching her daughter. And, like, I get where she's coming from because it's, like, the 60s and he's just, like, some kid and, you know, could probably do whatever he wanted to Lena and, legally speaking, get away with it completely scot-free. That said, he seems like a nice boy. I like Mikey.
Yeah.
Like, he's got a face that makes you think, like, at any moment he's going to take that douche aggressive turn, but he never does. He's a sweetheart. So
at first I didn't realize that he was the same kid from the party before. And when he walked in his school uniform especially, he just seemed like that McLagan kid from Harry Potter. And so I was like, who's this asshole? But I think he does turn out to be a nice boy. And I think the mom does that whole thing because there's no father figure. So not to say that fathers should be doing this when their daughters go on dates, but I think she was trying to show him that there's no dad here, but I'm not a pushover. So don't. But she basically gets the girls to leave the room so that she can threaten him, essentially. And he kind of compliments the house. He looks toward one of the rooms asking if that's where she does the seances, and she corrects him, calling them readings, and asks if he's ever had his palm read. So she is like going to give him a reading, but basically she looks at his hand and she's like, I see you're wearing a senior jacket. Are you aware my daughter's a sophomore? And he's like, yeah, like, it's fine. She talks about his lifeline and how there's some kind of issue with it, but that's when she, like, stabs her finger into his hand and is basically like, don't do anything to my daughter. I think it's interesting, though, that she's talking about his lifeline being kind of bad or maybe short, and what happens to him later. I feel like that was on purpose.
Spoiler alert. He did.
Yeah.
He is the first death in the movie, I believe, actually.
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next, Alice goes to the supply store. I think it seems like it's some kind of witchy supply store, or it might also just be a regular store. I don't know. But what she sees is the Ouija board. Now, this is the point in the film where I was like, you know what? I'm enjoying this. This is nice. And why that happened was because aside from that fake jump scare, nothing scary has happened. We're just getting to know a family. They live in this nice house. The mom's a fortune teller. Things are great. Whatever. It's just a nice family. The dad's gone, but everything's cool. It's daylight right now while she's at the store. Yeah. I'm happy.
It's great. And it's worth mentioning that when her mom picked her up all mad about the party or whatever, Lena specifically says, we should incorporate a Ouija board into the act.
Yes.
And I think that's what spurs the mom to go take a look at it.
Exactly. Yeah. But like you said, this was done on purpose. So Flanagan and the other writer, Jeff Howard, they wanted the characters to be worth caring about. The first script, quote, actively avoided the genre elements until the midpoint because we wanted to spend time with the family. Ultimately, they kept this approach, and they credit Universal, Blumhouse, and Platinum Dunes, the production companies, with letting them take the time to get to know the family before, quote, pressing the gas on the horror. And I just kind of think this is how it's weird that he points it out for this film as though it's something different, because I just think this is how Flanagan rolls. We've seen him do this before in Oracle, as depressing as Oracle was. Is it Oracle? Oculus. And also definitely happens in Hill House. He's all about creating heartbreaking but well-rounded characters as opposed to just gore, jump scares, and darkness. At the store, Alice considers the Ouija board game, since, like you said, Lena mentioned that they should add it to the act, and she buys it. Later, she waits outside in the car for school pickup, and she's circling jobs in the newspaper. Doris comes out of school, and two boys are bullying her, calling her like a witch and a weirdo. And Father Tom comes up and makes them go away, and he comforts her, saying that they're mean because they're scared, and really he feels bad for them. And she's like, yeah, I feel bad for them. On the way home, Doris suggests they should invite him over for a reading so that he can talk to his wife.
Father Tom, not the kid, just for clarification.
Yeah. Alice tells her that priests don't have wives, and she says that he did before she died.
And this is the part where I kind of thought about the fact that this is back-to-back movies with like a romantic subplot involving a priest.
Yeah.
I don't care for it.
I didn't mind it in this film.
Well, no.
It's done totally differently and way better.
It grew on me in this film, but I think it's partly because the same two actors play the parents in Haunting of Hill House, and they're just such loving parents.
It is the dad. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Or I forgot.
Well, actually, so she doesn't play the parent. I apologize. She plays Shirley grown up, but still, like, they just have really good chemistry, and it didn't bother me. But still, he's a priest. We don't have to sexualize priests. It's fine.
At home, Alice opens up the Ouija board, and she just immediately starts gluing magnets to the planchette and has magnets on her legs to make it work, basically. And she practices. She asks if there's a spirit here. Upstairs, Doris is working on her homework and starts answering the mom's questions that she's using to play with the board.
Yeah, you did not like this. You were very unhappy. You were sitting there like, no,
As the mom asks questions, maneuvering the planchette herself, she says, or Doris says that the name of the spirit is Marcus, and while they can't see him, he can see and hear them. When Alice finishes, Doris blinks her eyes, and she's normal again. Lena, who's been there on the bed the whole time, is like, what was that about? And Doris has no idea what she's talking about because she has no memory of, channeling, basically. Later, Alice sits down at the board again and calls out to Roger, her husband, asking if he's there. There's no response on the board, so she walks away, but then the camera lingers on the board as the planchette moves to no. I don't like that. Then Doris comes downstairs to the board. She says, I'm here, are you here? And the board spells out, hi, friend. And the planchette is moving completely on its own, so Doris doesn't even have her hands on it. She says, "Hi, friend, now what?" Distant whispering noises happening, which are frequent throughout the film. And she picks up the planchette, which has that like glass window. I guess you could call it a magnifying glass to read the letters. And she looks through it.
As this happened, I have a direct transcription of Brianna's reaction as this happened. Okay, let me get into character here. No. I'm not going to want to see it. No. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so fucking stressed. Oh my God. Oh my God. End scene.
Well, it's because we did that limited scope thing where she puts it up to her eye and then the camera is her eye. So now we're having to see through it. And I hate that.
Yeah, it's a very effective shot. He does it a couple of times throughout this movie. And each time it just kind of puckers you up a little bit.
Yeah. So, but this time we don't see anything. But she gasps asking, "Who are you?" And then that's it. So I hate this scene, but it was a really good tension builder. Upstairs, Lena is sleeping, and the covers are pulled off of her a little bit, so she pulls it back up. It happens again, and she pulls it back harder. Then the sheets are yanked away aggressively and completely, so she wakes up.
It's kind of creepy, though, right?
Yeah, I don't like that. She peeks at the foot of the bed, and there's nothing but the sheets, so she picks them up, lays back down. Unnoticed by Lena, though, is a full-ass demon in the doorway.
And unnoticed by Brianna. You didn't notice it at first. I actually rewound the scene so you could see it. We normally won't rewind or anything while we're watching these movies, but I knew you had to see it. And even saying to you, "Did you see what was in the doorway?" You said no. I said, "Here, let me rewind it so you can see what's in the doorway." And you still gasped when it showed up. You're like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a demon because it's supposed to be someone named Marcus.
Yeah, and so it's really just a shadow figure, though. You don't know that it's a demon.
It has glowing yellow eyes, and it has spiky fingers. I noticed. If you're going to make me notice, I'll notice.
Apparently, that was added in post-production. It wasn't even in the script. And Flanagan said, "Yeah, you can do it," but he insisted there be no, like, musical cue or spike there to, again, coax one of those stupid jump scares that he hates.
Yeah. So I wrote a little bit about that. The writer of the article actually says that they feel that sound cues lessen scares more often than enhance. I agree in some instances because it does act as a tell. Therefore, I like it because it helps me to know what is coming. It Follows did that a lot. Although their score was really good and fully beneficial, it was a tell every time.
Yeah, I kind of liked it for It Follows, though, because it kind of... It put you in that atmosphere. As soon as you heard that music, it kind of like spiked your heart rate and you're like, "Oh God, it's about to start."
Exactly.
And I love that. Oh God, I love that movie.
Back at school, Alice reports to the principal's office. It's the priest from earlier, Father Tom. So he's a principal. Principal Father Tom. That's too many words. He asks if she's been helping Doris with her homework. And assuming this means that she's struggling, she kind of starts apologizing for not helping enough. But it's actually that her homework has been done in cursive, which she apparently hasn't learned yet. So on the way home, Alice is like, "Who's doing your homework?" And she's like, "It's my friend. I let her use my hand."
That's called The Stranger.
Stop. Now, to the mother, this should be raising some red flags because she is a spiritual person. She should be like, "What the fuck? What's happening?" They arrive at home to a foreclosure notice on the door. Later, Lena and Doris are at the dinner table, and Doris asks if they'll have to move.
Just a note on the foreclosure here. I went ahead and I looked this up. The average cost of a house in 1967 was just under $15,000.
Oh my God.
And mean income for households in 1967 was about $8,200 a year.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, that's pretty good. I just wanted to point that out. And we can change the subject before I turn this into a political podcast.
Also, did you notice how fancy the foreclosure paperwork looked?
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, you got to draw that up by hand.
Yeah, it was classy looking.
You gotta take some calligraphy lessons to kick people out of their homes.
So at the dinner table, Doris asks if they'll have to move. And Linda says I keep calling her Linda the way it's written, but it's Lena. Lena says she doesn't know. Doris says that their dad won't like that. And so she pulls out the Ouija board to report the news, but there's no response. Lena leaves the table and goes outside where her mom is basically crying on the stoop. As they talk in the background, so the door is open into the house. We can see Doris. She gets up from the table. She walks into a room, turns on a light. They keep talking. And then we see Doris, she's basically ripping into a wall somewhere. We don't really know where yet. And then when Mom and Lena come back into frame, we also see Doris come back, and she walks up to them with a pouch of money. Alice asks her where she found it, and they go into the basement, and Doris shows them the foundation where she's able to easily pull out a rock, and there's a hole. She reports that it belonged to whoever lived there before, and that Daddy told her about it through the Ouija board.
So, like, what do you do, if your daughter does this?
Happy to take the money. The house is for sale.
I'm going to take it one step further. Happy to take the money. House is for sale. Dropping the kid off at the fire station.
No
way.
We'll go to a hotel room, though, for sure.
Absolutely not. That kid is gone. Sorry, sweetie.
So they all go to the board, the Ouija board, and Lena does not want to participate, but basically she does at the request of her mom. Doris says, Daddy, we found the money. Thank you. And then she starts hearing whispers, but sometimes they're difficult to hear. She says she hears best at the board when she touches the planchette. She asks, Daddy, are you here? And the board says yes, causing Lena to jump out of her chair. Alice gives it a test. She asks where he was when she told him she was pregnant with Lena. And it spells out shower. So Alice takes her hands off the planchette in surprise. Doris puts the planchette up to her eye, and Mom asks her what she's doing. And she says sometimes she sees them, but she hasn't seen her dad yet. Mom starts crying and asks Roger, are you really here? And the board says yes. Lena is still not liking this. And at this point, and I think I even said it to you, I was like, but is this Roger the dad? Because, like, or could this just be spirits that have heard them the whole time in the house and therefore know the answers to these questions?
Yeah, and I mean, hard to blame them, like, in character for not questioning it. But, like, as a horror movie fan, like, obviously that's an evil spirit.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Right. Alice is excited. She tells Lena that now they can actually do what they've been pretending to do. She says we can help people and we can talk to Dad. She says that her mom was a true fortune teller, reading tea leaves and tarot cards. When she was young, she thought it was silly, even pathetic, and that it was a scam. So then why did you follow in her footsteps? But she suggests that maybe her mom was right, that it skips a generation. So she's essentially acknowledging that she doesn't have the gift, but it appears that Doris does. She ends the conversation saying that she'll take the money to the bank tomorrow. By the way, at this point, nobody has ever said any goodbyes to the board. And, like, what does that mean? In Host, it wasn't good. So, just saying.
Well, we've already established that this movie does not have a happy ending, so yeah. I'm sure we can chalk that up to that.
Lena is left alone at the table. She picks up the planchette and looks through it. Something was there in the doorway. Right? I don't remember quite how the scene plays out.
Yeah, it was like a profile view of like a tall, human-like, but not human shadow or figure, just sort of through the doorway, and then it very quickly like takes a step back out of view.
And then she just goes to bed.
Yeah, just goes to bed. No problem.
Of course. At school, Lena and Mikey are talking about homecoming because at the friend's house at the Ouija board party, he had like asked her through the board to go to homecoming. So she was asking if he's serious, and they're kind of feeling each other out. They almost kiss, and they're interrupted by Father Tom, who says that there's not enough room for the Holy Ghost. But ultimately, he wants to talk to Lena about Doris, because Doris hasn't been to school for a few days. And it's extra odd because their mom hasn't reported her out as sick. Lena's like, well, Mom put her to work, is essentially the answer.
Got bills to pay,
Yeah. Cut to at home, Doris is leading a reading for a woman who wants to know if her father is proud of her. The board says yes, and a male voice comes out of Doris to say, always. Doris giggles, saying that it tickled. Then she reaches behind her neck and her face changes to pain, but nobody notices. That night, Doris awakes with a jump and goes to Lena's room to tell her that her neck hurts. Lena gives her some medicine and she tries to go to sleep, but it keeps hurting. She goes to the board and asks what's happening to her neck. There's no answer. And she says, Daddy, it hurts. So at first I thought she was just experiencing pain from because mediums will know. They'll be like, oh, I'm feeling something in my chest. Did the person die from a heart attack or something like that? So they'll feel, and I don't know if they feel pain or exactly what they feel, but I thought this was that. But they never really addressed this or like explain what this was at all.
Yeah, that was kind of a rare miss for this movie. Like, it kind of keeps hinting at this, and then it's just suddenly gone.
Yeah.
If they did explain it, I completely missed it.
Yeah. She looks through the planchette, and there's a noise. Then she looks again, and there's something there that runs away. Her neck starts hurting more, and she walks away from the board to a mirror, which I think is the Oculus mirror, because that article said at the 50-minute mark, the Oculus mirror is there.
Yeah, whether it's this scene or another scene, there's one scene where the Oculus mirror makes an appearance, but this is very dark, and we both kind of missed it, so yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
She holds up the planchette to look through the window, and there's a horrendous thing behind her, reminiscent of the rubber suit from American Horror Story, but with glowing eyes. Weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that was in the doorway of Lena's room. It's just this tall, shadowy figure, and it casually goes elbow deep down Doris's throat. No big deal.
But it also says, like, this is a game or something like that. It says something.
Yeah, so we frequently watch movies with subtitles because I don't know, I'm 80 years old. And that's what it said. It said, like, this is a game at some point. But I don't get that, and I never heard that, and I don't know if that's, like, maybe a mistranslation by the person who wrote the subtitles. Maybe it's supposed to be this isn't a game.
Yeah.
But that didn't really make any sense to me. Yeah.
So it basically makes Doris open her mouth it's so wide that it's like not human. And also bends her backward in that, way that horror movies make bodies bend to make them look creepy.
It was kind of Matrix-y, honestly.
Yeah, only even further back. And it fully goes into her, and then she just kind of passes out on the floor. Later, Lena is asleep, and then there's like that whispering happens. Camera pans to Doris at her bedside with her eyes rolled back. I don't know what she's doing, but Lena wakes up suddenly, and Doris is in the doorway, hidden in the dark, unseen. Then Lena goes to the bathroom. She hears the whispering, so she turns around, but there's nothing behind her. And when she turns back to the mirror, suddenly her mouth is being fully sewn shut. Then she wakes up again.
That scene, love it. It's a great sequence, start to finish. So just to clarify, like, Doris is up on Lena's bed whispering into her ear while she sleeps. Oh. And then when Lena wakes up, Doris is like back in the doorway. Lena doesn't see her. And then the next time they show the doorway, she's gone. And then when she goes in the bathroom, her mouth being like closed is very reminiscent of The Matrix. There's a scene where Keanu Reeves is getting interrogated by Agent Smith before he even like really knows about The Matrix. It's the same exact thing. It's like the skin is just sort of like melting and fusing lips shut. It's actually a very specific fear of mine. It's not something I like actively live in fear of every day, but it creeps me out both in The Matrix and here. So it's just, that's probably for me one of the best sequences in this whole movie.
Yeah.
Because it's like she's doing the whispering, you're like, oh, that's creepy. And then she's standing in the doorway like, oh, that's creepy. And then her mouth gets fused shut. And you're like, oh my God, get me out of this, please. So when she like wakes up a second time, you're like, oh, thank God.
Literally. At school on the playground, Doris is standing completely still, looking off at nothing. She looks dead. And where are the nuns to notice? But whatever. Those same two kids are making fun of her from afar, and one of them takes out a slingshot.
What is he, Dennis the Menace?
And takes aim, yeah. Suddenly, Doris quickly turns her head to face him, as though she knows that he's going to do this, which she does. And against his will, the slingshot turns on him. We hear it launch, he screams, and everyone but Doris runs to him.
Yeah, so he's like holding the slingshot like in his right hand. He's using his left hand to pull it back. And then he like turns the slingshot so it's facing him, but he's still using his own hands to like pull it back. And his friend is like, dude, stop. And he's, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And then you don't see it, but presumably it like takes out one of his eyes. There's no way that ends well for him.
A lesson learned for a bully.
Yeah. This is the second 9-year-old that's harmed in this movie that I'm like, fucking good. Kid deserved it.
That night, Alice gets all gussied up, seemingly for a date. She leaves Lena to babysit and meets Father Tom at a restaurant. Did you notice how smoky it was inside of that restaurant?
Oh, yeah. You could smoke like anywhere back then.
It was
wonderful.
Unpleasantly smoky looking. At home, Lena invited Mikey over, and when he arrives, Doris is in the living room watching TV. Now, the way this scene is shot, Doris watching TV is in the foreground, but she's not the focus of the shot. What's happening at the door is. However, you can see that her eyes are rolled back in her head. And this is just another one, like the demon in the doorway, like Doris in the doorway. This is just what Flanagan does, I think, because he does this a lot in Hill House. That's the one where you've said that there's tons of ghosts throughout the house and you have to notice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've watched Hill House like 3 times, and I'm pretty sure there are still ghosts that I haven't seen.
Yeah, so he loves to like put things there that you may or may not see, which is fun. I just said it was fun about something scary. Oh my God.
Proud of you.
Lena and Mikey go upstairs to her room. At dinner, Alice explains that she and Doris are doing good work for people. She offers him a reading, and she says to help you with your wife, which I just think is way forward and rude. He tells her that he and his wife used to come here to this restaurant like twice a week, and Alice and her husband also used to come here. Basically, they're just like having a really chill, vaguely flirty conversation. And we talked about it a little bit. I'm on board with this. I think it's cute. They're adorable. It feels way more natural and way more comfortable than the forced partnership in Stigmata. And ultimately, it's not a relationship. They don't kiss. They don't touch. They never do anything inappropriate. Well, it's just, it's cute.
That's because they die.
Well, yeah, spoiler, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the, like, being okay with it is Henry Thomas just doing a fantastic job in this role. And yeah, this didn't bother me as much as Stigmata. I just, in general, 1, not every movie needs a romantic subplot, and 2, they're priests. Like, just
I wouldn't even consider this a romantic subplot, though. It's, like, barely there. It's like you kind of wonder, could they, would they, but it's barely there.
Yeah, I guess. Doesn't need to be there at all, even if it's just barely there.
Lena and Mikey are sitting on her bed talking, and she starts to get nervous about the time and her mom coming home, and he compares them to Romeo and Juliet. What does she compare them to? Do you remember? Something more volatile.
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
I didn't write it down. They kiss, and then he says goodnight, and he goes downstairs. And he says, later, kiddo, to Doris, but when he looks on the couch, she's not there. She surprises him behind him and says, want to hear something cool? And he says, sure. And then this is where she asks, do you know what it feels like to be strangled to death? And she goes into very specific detail.
Yeah, I'm going to read it here for you.
Oh my God.
I am not going to try and put any
little girl voice on.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just giving you the words here. Do you know what it feels like to be strangled to death? First, you feel the pressure in your throat. Your eyes water, and you start to taste something very, very sour in your mouth. Then it's like someone lights a match right in the middle of your chest, and that fire grows. It fills your lungs and your throat and all the way behind your eyes. And finally, that fire turns to ice, like pins and needles of ice are sticking into your fingers, your toes, your arms. You see stars and then darkness, and the last thing you feel is cold. That's it. And then Doris says, "Good night, Romeo."
Yes,
Love it.
She says, goodnight, Romeo. They were talking about Romeo and Juliet, which just proves this, like, all there, hearing everything idea.
Yeah, and to Mikey's credit, like, how he didn't respond, what the fuck, and then never come back is beyond me. Yeah. I am gone. Again, not even my kid. If I'm Mikey, I'm taking her to the fire station. Just dropping her off, leaving her there.
Again, I think that goes to Lulu Wilson's credit of the way that she approached this. I mean, brilliant as a child to just be like, no, I'm not going to do it in a creepy way. It almost makes you be like, I don't know what to do with this because she's just simply telling me the facts. Look at how adorable she is. This is clearly fucked up, but she's so cute. It's crazy. Later, Lena is walking to her room and hears scribbling, so she peeks in Doris's room. Doris is sitting on the floor writing a ton, but she's looking the other direction. So her right hand is writing on the floor, like on paper on the floor. She's looking to the left, completely not at what she's writing. In Lena's room, she finds a doll that has its mouth sewn shut. So she goes back to Doris's room, but Doris insists that she didn't do it. She says, Daddy did it to stop the voices.
And Lena's really mad. She said, Dad gave me this doll. You know he gave me this doll. She is, like, so upset that this doll was vandalized.
Yeah. So Lena and Mom now argue because Lena thinks something is wrong with Doris. But Alice says that she's, quote, experiencing something amazing. Yeah, amazingly horrifying. That's what I think. Lena says she's worried because if this was really Dad, why would he do anything to change her? And at that point, how are you not being like, Yeah, you're right. You're right. This is fucked up.
It's grief. You want to believe, because that's somebody that you love, somebody that you've lost, somebody that you'll never talk to again. And suddenly you have this thing where you feel like you can talk to them again. And I feel like that's Mike Flanagan in a lot of his stuff deals with grief. And I think he does a great job with it because it's that feeling of, you'd give or believe anything to be able to just talk to that person one more time. It seems totally realistic to me,
The next morning, Doris says she doesn't want to go to school, and she says it with an attitude. She says she wants to stay home and talk to her friends. So Lena goes to Doris's room to collect her school things because her mom told her to, and she finds these papers under the bed. She ends up bringing them to Father Tom. She asks if anyone at school speaks Polish because she found these under Doris's bed. She thinks it's Polish. I don't know how she even knows what Polish looks like, but whatever. Father Tom takes them says that he'll take them to Sister Hannah because she came from Poland after the war and might be able to help. Next, Father Tom goes to their house and requests a reading. Alice is very happy to see him.
Just want to throw something out there. As he pulls up to the house and he gets out of the car, and as he's getting out of the car, he's got like his bag with him, and there's like a light piano theme coming, and this whole shot is a very big homage to The Exorcist.
Oh.
Yeah, both the music, because that, kind of iconic Exorcist piano theme, and the shot of him standing, outside the door, looking towards the door, holding his bag, that is straight up homage to The Exorcist.
I like that. That's cool. So Doris leads the reading, asking if Gloria, his wife, is here, and it spells out darling. Then she reports that she hears her saying, I miss you. He asks Gloria, so he wants to test it. He asks Gloria what her middle name is, and it spells out Lynn. He doesn't look impressed, but he does say remarkable.
But also, not remarkable. Lynn is like every woman in America's middle name.
But was it in 1967?
I don't know, but it's like
it
Lynn.
Is now.
Look, Lynn, Marie, and Anne. 95% of women in the United States middle name right there.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a risky question to even answer as a medium because it's either correct or not, and then you're fucked if it's not.
Well, that just means you're not a medium.
Well, exactly. And then everyone knows you're a scam and now you're not making money anymore. So it's like, whatever. Then it spells, I forgive you. And he asks for what? And Doris said, well, the board says no. And then Doris translates that to say it's not important. And then it changes the subject. It says, don't hide behind the collar.
You got that a little twisted. It says, I forgive you. And he says, for what? And she says, the fight. And then as a way of testing, he says, what was the fight about?
Yeah.
And there's a little hesitation. And then the planchette goes to no. And Doris she says it doesn't matter. And then she changes the subject and moves right on.
So she moves on to basically it's spelling out, don't hide behind the collar, wants you to be. And then Doris answers happy, but says it in a woman's voice.
Pretty creepy. So Alice is reading the words for Doris as the planchette is moving. So she's saying, don't hide behind the collar, want you to be. And then Doris just cuts in with this adult woman voice, happy.
Yeah.
It's creepy as hell. Love it.
Father Tom is quite composed, but he says, that was something. Then he gets up and he says the reading isn't the only reason for his visit. And he looks to Lena saying that she's gotten herself into trouble. So Lena goes along with it and she's like, yeah, we should go upstairs and talk in private. Doris wants to come, but he's like, no, we need you to hold down the fort here. He's really sweet with her. Lena, Alice, and Father Tom all go upstairs. And when they're going upstairs, he asks Lena, where did she write them? So they go into Doris's room. Now, the whole time, Alice is confused because she's like, okay, what has Lena done? Oh my God. And now we're going into Doris's room. What's going on? He says that his wife's middle name is Catherine, but his mother's middle name is Lynn. So Alice starts apologizing, sometimes communication doesn't go right. And he says, well, no, I tricked her because I was thinking Lynn as hard as I could. So he's she's channeling something and reading minds, but what is it that she's channeling? He explains the forgiveness thing was non-specific, and when he pressed, she changed the subject.
And he also says that when he asked what the fight was about, he purposefully cleared his own mind, so he wasn't thinking anything, so she couldn't pick up on whatever he was thinking.
And then he says the voice was a woman's voice. It's just enough to be surprised by it. And if you're truly in grief, you're going to be like, oh my God, that was my person. So you're not even evaluating if it was really their voice or not. So yeah, he says he believes that Doris is channeling, but it was not his wife. Meanwhile, the doorbell rings, and it's Mikey looking for Lena.
And nobody upstairs hears the doorbell.
I know. I wrote that too. Like,
yeah.
What the hell?
Disappointing Mike Flanagan.
She says, Lena will be home soon. They're talking to the man about us, she says. And she encourages him to wait, asking if he wants to see something cool. Which, by the way, I would say, no, I'm good. You already told me something cool. I don't need to see something cool.
Yeah, I would just assume that she's going to strangle me to death
exactly.
after the last thing.
Exactly. But she entices him with treasure in the walls, and so they go to the basement.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I am at a point in my life where, like, anything north of, like, $100, I would follow her for the chance to get. Like, no, I don't want to get strangled to death by a 9-year-old girl, but, like, if there's $1,000 in that wall, like, that could really help me. So, yeah. Kind of worth it. And then also, you know, like, if she does kill me, I also don't need that money anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win-win, yeah.
At the same time, Tom is explaining what's written on the papers. He says that the nun who read it was disturbed. It's the journal by someone named Marcus. He and his family were taken to a camp during Germany's invasion of Poland. At the camp, there was a doctor known as the Devil's Doctor because he was into the occult and inhumane experiments on people. Marcus was rescued and came to America, but ended up on the streets and eventually in a mental hospital. Meanwhile, Doris is leading Mikey to the money hole in the wall, and he sticks his hand in. Tom continues that at the hospital, he recognized a doctor. It was the same doctor from the camp, and somehow Marcus gets taken from the hospital by this doctor to this house, to a secret room in the basement where the experiments continued. Mikey finds a doctor's bag with a bunch of licenses in it. Tom says that the doctor cut out tongues and vocal cords and sewed their mouths shut. He says in the journal that Marcus explains his own murder in great detail and after. Doris encourages Mikey to keep digging, and behind him, her face is changing. I think her eyes are rolling back in her head and her mouth is opening.
This whole sequence, right behind, or right up there with the bathroom scene, is just a great sequence because it's just cutting back and forth. Like, Father Tom is telling this story of Marcus, of the ghost that possessed Doris, while Doris is kind of coercing Mikey into exploring downstairs.
Yeah.
And they just keep flashing back and forth. And what Tom is saying is giving context to that situation as it's unfolding. So, like, when he pulls out the license, it's right, you know, as you realize that those are licenses of people that the Devil Doctor, you know, killed in this house.
Right.
And it's just such a really good scene. And that's, like, you know, again, one of the things I love about Mike Flanagan.
Tom continues that Marcus talks about things in the dark taking him over. And Doris tells Mikey that you were right about this house. It has good bones. Referring to something that he told Lena, I think, when they were, like, talking about the house. And he's like, oh, my dad's an architect. It's all I know what to talk about. And a skull just appears in the hole.
Yeah, it drops down. And this was an homage to Jaws.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you wrote that down or...
I didn't.
Yeah. It's there's a shot in Jaws where a face or a head underwater kind of pops up and it scares you. And Mike Flanagan loved that scene when he was younger. So he incorporated this scene as just sort of a subtle wink wink to Jaws.
I thought it was really cheesy and dumb. I don't know.
That's fine. I didn't ask.
It just didn't work for me.
I don't remember asking, so.
Wow. I don't need to be asked. That's what this podcast is for. Alice is like, okay, we'll just take Doris away from the house. But Tom is basically like, it's too late. The house isn't the problem anymore. It's Doris.
Again, just drop her off at the fire station.
Yeah.
There are safe haven laws. Like, it's fine. Like, you can make a new kid. Just fucking go.
He says he's reported to the findings to the archdiocese and an exorcism is necessary. Lena tells them to stop talking because the spirits have been watching and listening this entire time. So, like, just shut up. They go downstairs. It's dark and quiet. And they call for Doris. Just as Mom decides to get Doris and, like, bring her outside, Mikey's body comes down from the ceiling. He's hanging. He's dead.
Mikey's a real trooper for coming back after the whole strangulation thing. And then this is his reward.
Yeah.
You know, it's real sad. He deserved better.
Lena freaks out, of course, and Mom calms her down. But just as that happens, music, like old-timey music, starts playing from the vent. Mom tells Lena to wait outside, and Lena's like, no way, that's my sister. This is my house. I'm going with you. Then she says, besides, splitting up sounds like the stupidest thing in the world. correct Lena.
Mike Flanagan said that he had to remind himself when writing this script how stupid splitting up was.
Yeah.
Super badass moment for Lena where she's just like, it's that classic hero's moment where they're like, no, I'm down and out right now, but I'm going to fight.
This is my house.
Yeah.
I have to protect it.
And I'm going to do that by killing my 9-year-old sister.
Mom agrees and also plans to burn the Ouija board in the furnace.
Real quick, though. So they're like, oh, grab the Ouija board, so we'll burn it. And they just, like, let Lena carry it. And I feel like given everything that's happened and what they seem to believe, like, if this is dangerous enough that you need to burn it, maybe don't let the child carry it. Like, maybe one of the adults should take that risk on instead of passing it on to a child. Just throwing that out there.
I think you have to fully use the Ouija board in order to...
I'm just saying, if that's me, if I'm that priest there, I'm grabbing that board because I'm a hero.
Okay, well, just as they're about to burn it, the lights all go out.
And you gasped.
I sure did.
The lights went out and you went, oh!
I assumed something would happen, but nothing really happens. They put the Ouija board into the furnace to burn it. Then they hear Doris crying for help through another vent in the basement.
Trap.
Yeah,
1,000%
100.
trap.
Yeah. But they fall for it. Tom's like, I'll go through it. And it leads to the secret room. There's tools all laid out. And as the music stops, Doris is behind him and says, that's where we died.
And I gotta say, this room looks less like a Holocaust torture chamber and more like an S&M dungeon to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that says about me.
He attempts to begin the exorcism saying, like, Our Father who art in heaven. But demon voices come from Doris saying he can't see it. If he could see this, it wouldn't have happened. Tom continues, but Doris literally flies at him and, like, takes him down. Alice and Lena on the other side of the basement hear him coming back through the vent, but he's come through with a knife because he's now possessed. He says, she's part of the walls now, and she told me the most wonderfully awful things. They run up the stairs, and he grabs a hold of Alice at the top of the basement steps, but he pauses, and he basically comes to in that moment. He lets her go, closes the door to, like, close him off from them, letting Alice go.
What a hero.
Yeah. But Doris is on the ceiling of the basement, of course. She's climbed up the ceiling.
Yeah, and she's up there on, like, all fours in the corner in that, like, classic horror movie thing.
Yeah, of course.
And Briana, quote, oh, come on, why does she have to do that? Just use the stairs like a normal person.
I think I said that later when she climbs up the side of the wall.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
But anyway, she staying, like, now she just has full powers that aren't, she doesn't have to touch them. He gets thrown down the stairs, basically. I think his neck cracks and he's just dead.
Yeah, we don't see him again, but given the way everybody else in this movie turns up, I just assume he's dead.
I mean, we see his body later because the mom gets dragged to the basement and his body is still there.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. Upstairs, the front door is locked and the Ouija board is back. Now, this was a little... because it's not the Ouija board itself that's haunted. It is the house. So why would the Ouija board just come back?
The way that I looked at it is, it's these spirits that are just tormenting these people. They put it back because they knew it would scare them. They put it back because their only goal is to just make these people's lives a living hell.
Okay, I'll buy it. The mom gets tossed. Lena is picked up and thrown by Mikey up the stairs.
So he is hanging from the ceiling on, like, it looks like a bed sheet.
Yeah.
Like a really long sheet. And he just kind of like one of those performers that, like, twists and twirls on the rope.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He just sort of, like, bounces down, grabs Lena, and, like, throws her up on top of the balcony. And then he's just hanging there dead again.
Yeah.
It was very much a supernatural thing. Like, it wasn't Mikey.
Yeah.
It was just some force using Mikey's body. But
exactly.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, what is happening?
Yeah, you were unhappy.
Now Doris crawls up the wall instead of using the stairs. And she does that thing again. She's holding on to Lena's head and, like, whispering with her eyes rolled back into her head. Mom comes to and, like, begs her to stop. She's basically trying to negotiate with a terrorist here. It's not going to work out. She even tries to sacrifice herself. And the demon is like, no, we're going to take you all, so I don't need to play these games.
I mean, smart move by the demon, honestly. Don't make a trade if you don't need to.
Next, Alice is being dragged to the secret room, but Lena is scooped up and taken to her bed. She wakes up saying, Dad, and we can see him, so he's there. So now she finally is seeing her dad, which is nice. Then the scene where Lena accuses Doris of sewing the doll's mouth shut is like playing over before her. And Doris says again, Daddy did it to stop the voices. And then the dad is on her bed holding the doll. So Lena is seeing this memory play over, seeing her dad holding the doll, and things are coming together for her in her mind. Downstairs, Doris secures Alice to the table with metal cuffs, basically.
Shackles.
Shackles, that's the word.
Yeah.
And she picks up like a knife or a scalpel, some kind of thing. Alice just says, like, I'm sorry, I just wanted us to talk to Daddy again. The demons say he's gone, he lives in the dark and the cold, and he screams and screams. But Lena surprises everyone by smacking her down with a metal chair.
And it is awesome. Like, it is brutal. Like, it is not a light hit. She slams this chair into Doris. It is incredible. Like, I'm laughing at it, and, like, obviously there's nothing objectively funny about a 9-year-old getting hit with a metal chair, but it was intense and just so unexpected.
They did a really good job, though, of... In the moment, I wasn't thinking, oh my God, they just smacked a child with a chair. She is not a child anymore.
Yeah, for sure. But it is, even in that context, it's not something that movies get to do very often. You know, like, you can't...
Well, that's why we don't see what happens next, really, from the perspective. But Flanagan said that he was surprised they got away with it, hitting a kid with a chair. He said, quote, but I guess since one of the only things we knew had to happen was that we had to murder a 9-year-old on camera, I guess the chair wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like we said earlier, like, it's just, I think that really is the mark of a good movie, that you're watching something that horrific, but you're so invested in the events that it doesn't...
You're again, like, this is acceptable.
Yeah, you're not thinking about her as a child.
Yeah.
Again, Mike Flanagan, let's go.
So Lena picks up like this little hookish needle. Doris's mouth opens up and she looks inside and she can like see the eye of the demon. It's very Lord of the Rings, actually. And then the demons are like all around Lena all of a sudden, trying to pull her off of Doris. But Lena is sewing Doris's mouth shut. And all we can see is her hand coming up and down as she's doing the motion. Lena gets pushed back away. The mom kind of like passes out for some reason. She's like there, and then all of a sudden she's not there. I guess maybe she, like, her body was like, no, don't watch one daughter kill your other. Suddenly Doris is fine. She gets up and Roger is there too. Then the mom wakes up and no one is there. So it's almost like the mom was hallucinating maybe.
So she was watching Doris dies. She was watching her spirit get reunited with her dad.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I took it.
Exactly.
I will say this was kind of one moment that I don't love about the movie, and I wish I could just like have a 2-minute conversation with Mike Flanagan about it, because I'm sure like there is more, you know, context there, but I don't quite understand how sewing her mouth shut immediately killed her.
Me too.
And then, you know, the other thing, and this is a very minor gripe, and I'm sure this is more of a production issue / marketing issue. Zero blood. This girl's mouth is sewn shut, and there isn't a drop of blood anywhere. And I get it. Again, it's, you know, it's pretty brutal what they're doing to a kid, and that's probably one of the things where, like, if you do this, it's going to get an R rating. But it just kind of pulls you out of the moment a little bit. You know, to this point, you're very invested, you're very in this world, and that little sequence right there pulled me out of it. And it's probably my biggest criticism. But also, it doesn't stop me from loving the movie, because as we've talked about before, horror endings are very, very hard, and that's a place where I'm prone to just give a lot more slack.
And to me, I kind of thought it was like a combination of a lot of things. The demons have left her body at this point, I believe. And so I think it is, like, if you think about The Exorcist, they were like, this is killing her. If we let this go on, she's going to die. So you could maybe argue the same thing, that like...
Maybe she was already dead.
Maybe she was dead. Or if, like, as soon as the possession is over, her body will be dead.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And that's exactly why I just want to ask Mike Flanagan about it. Because I'm sure that that's the sort of thing he was intending, but I just need that little bit of clarification for my own sake.
The mom has now awoken. She sees Doris's dead body. She breaks her, like, literally breaks her wrist, I think, to get free from the metal shackles.
She sure does.
And she goes over and, like, cries over Doris's body. Lena is crying against the wall, saying that she had to do it. And then she comes over to the mom, and her eyes are bad, and she stabs the mom. As Alice basically lays dying, Lena comes to, So now she's Lena again, and she's just crying. And Alice is like, it's not your fault. It wasn't you. Like, it's okay. And as she dies, she starts smiling. Over Lena's shoulder, we can see Doris and Roger. And she says to Lena, everybody's waiting. And she dies. This was the saddest part to me because I was like, Lena is just left here with several dead bodies, knowing that her entire family is like happy together somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely a gut punch. And like we said in the beginning, like, it definitely gets away with this because it's a prequel. Like, I feel like no studio is going to allow that ending if this isn't a prequel.
Right.
Like, sorry, guys, we need to give our audiences more than this. Like, we need to give them a little hope, but there's no hope in this situation.
And so as Lena is crying, we start hearing her name being called by a man. And we come to Lena, 2 months later, actually, is what it is. She's in a doctor's office. She is talking to like a psychiatrist. And he's basically trying to get information out of her. And she is not able to say anything at all about what's happened here. She's been at the hospital for 2 months. And he says that they can't find Doris. So whether her or her body, they can't find it. Which means they found all the other bodies, but not Doris's. She gets taken back to her room. And in her room, she rips off a corner of the carpet, also rips off her fingernail, and creates a Ouija board on the floor out of blood.
So fucking metal.
And she uses her hands as a planchette to call for Doris, but there's no response. Later, the doctor is like walking down the hall, kind of looking into everyone's room, or, glancing really. And he passes her room, and when we can see through the window that there's somebody else standing in there. It's Doris, I guess. I didn't really see who it was, but...
Yeah, you didn't really see it that well, but it was Lena sitting on the bed and then Doris sitting right next to her on the bed. And the doctor just passes by, and then he does kind of a double take a couple steps later.
Yeah.
Comes back to the door. And
now Lena is right up against the window, staring at him. It is so fucking creepy. And the camera maybe pans out a little bit, and we can see Doris scurrying on the ceiling, because again, why would she use the floor when she can use the ceiling? And cut to black, presumably that doctor is not doing well.
He did.
And that is our film.
Yeah. So a little bit of context for where this fits into the original Ouija, even though you don't need to watch it and nobody should ever see it again. But Lynn Shay, famously from the Insidious series, plays an older woman in the original Ouija who kind of has some terrifying history with, the thing that is tormenting them. And that is Lena in this movie.
Yeah.
So that this is the origin of her character and how she came to be tormented by this Ouija board.
What would you give this for a jump score?
Jump score, probably like a 4. Like, there weren't really many.
Okay. It's a 6.
Okay.
There weren't many? This was our most jump scares in at least a couple weeks, I feel like.
Really?
The Shining had none. Stigmata was trash.
Yeah, but I mean, so other than the mom bursting in that like first funny little cheap jump scare, what else is there?
Okay, I don't know. I guess I'm bad at defining jump scares, but I tried to write like when I jumped or when I gasped or when I made a comment.
Oh, yeah.
And I consider all of that some kind of jump scare.
And that's fair. Like, this is on a personal level for me. If I counted every time you did it, every movie would be a 10.
Nightlight score.
This is a solid 6, 7. It's not a lot that's going to stick with you, but there's definitely some creepy stuff in there, like Doris whispering into Lena's ear while she sleeps. That's one that gets me a lot. Like I said, the mouth thing, really, that's something that like stresses me out. Like, just, God, if I got a stuffy nose, like, it's terrible.
Yeah, so we watched this yesterday, and so I wanted to have night come before I like wrote my score, and I never actually wrote it. But yeah, I was definitely thinking about it like a little bit. I wasn't so scared, but I was definitely thinking about it. So I'm going to say a 6.
All right.
What's your horror buff score?
This is a 7 for me. It's a good movie. I love Mike Flanagan. I'm a stan for Mike Flanagan. So, take that for what you will. There are a couple unanswered questions, couple loose ends, couple things that aren't as clearly explained as maybe they should be or could be. So it's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it is a much better movie than it has any right being and that I expected it to be. So it's a 7, and I feel good about it. My
Scaredy Cat score is a 6 because just just the anticipation of this movie leading up to it, I was very scared. And the leftover scare isn't as much as I assumed it would be, but it was just a good, scary movie.
Yeah, good scary movie.
And what did you say your horror buff score was, a 7?
Yes.
Yeah, my Nia Fright score is also going to be a 7.
What a clever little play on words.
Because it definitely is, let's say, just as a movie, it's a really good movie. There's character development and you care about these people as they're dying. So yeah, I again don't want to watch it again, and you probably will never catch me wanting to watch any of these movies again, but good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a solid B. It's the kind of movie where, like, you're not gonna, like, if you get that on a test, you're not gonna, like, run home and show your mom, like, oh, I got a B, but, like, people ask you how you did, you'll feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's what this movie is.
All right, well, any final thoughts to share?
Briana is traveling for work the week right after we record this. It'll be just about over by the time the episode is released. So she's going to be sleeping in a hotel room by herself for the next 4 nights.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that this movie didn't stick with you. I had a lot of concerns about this.
I think I still would be scared in a hotel room, but it's fine. I'll be fine, everyone. It'll be fine.
Everything's fine.
We are watching Urban Legend for our next episode.
Hell yeah. I am way overdue for, like, a late 90s slasher.
Yeah. This is definitely one of those movies that I felt like I missed out on because I was too scared. So I'm kind of excited. Use that word loosely.
I don't want to fall prey to, like, hyperbole here, but this movie made Rebecca Gayhart's career. Okay, so.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, thanks for listening to Go a Little Mad. Please be sure to follow or subscribe to us on your favorite pod platform and like us on Instagram and Facebook at Go a Little Mad Pod. Visit goalittlemadpod.com to continue the conversation about each episode, and you can help us spread the word with a quick review and 5-star rating, or grab some merch from our TeePublic site. Your sharing makes all the difference. Thanks, everyone.
Sharing is caring.